In this video, we're going to talk about settings. There's about 3 different types of settings that you can use depending on what it is you're trying to adjust. And settings are located in 3 different places. You can go to the settings under the measure button. You can go to settings under the device. And you can also go to settings under jobs and go to the settings here. So this is where we'll start. And the settings under the jobs, this has to do with how we want to set up our job. So I'll start from left to right. We can adjust the distance unit. So no matter what the CAD department is doing, hopefully they're using XYZ coordinates, and then we can use feet and inches and fractions of inches. But if we want to translate the file to meters, we can adjust it to meters. If we want to adjust it to decimal feet, maybe we're in front of an excavator and that particular trade wants to see things in the format of 3.5 feet instead of 3 feet 6 inches. We can change it to decimal feet. Or we can simply round the fractions up to a 16th, eighth, or quarter. Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to see something like 13/64ths or something. That's not a measurement that we can really get to. So we can adjust that stuff here per the job that we're in. We can also adjust the coordinate order. Our options here are X, Y, Z, and northing, easting, and Z. Surveyors like to use northing, easting, and Z. We're not surveyors. I like to use X, Y, and Z. However, sometimes control points are given to us in northing, easting, and Z. And that's something that if it's not apples to apples, we probably want to have the CAD department sort that stuff out. But when they give it to us, we want to make sure if they're giving it to us in northing and easting, we want to make sure that we're in northing and easting. If they're giving it to us in X, Y, and Z, we want to make sure that we're having our set to X, Y, and Z. Again, just apples to apples. We can adjust the language here if we want to. You've got a few options there. And if you want to clear the layout flags, maybe you laid out 500 points today and think you can do better tomorrow and you want to try it again, you can clear the layout flags and start over again. When it comes to the device and the settings here, this is going to pertain to your prism settings as well as your robotic total station settings. So in the prism settings, we can change our target type. Maybe I switched prisms and instead of an MT1000, I've got an AT360 now, or a standard 360 prism. Or maybe there's a back sight on the job site that's not a prism that we normally would use. We can use custom prism. And if that's the case, we would just need to make sure that we entered in the prism constant, which is going to be printed on the prism somewhere. All right. And also when we click on that and we change between the two, it pulls open the input form button so that we can identify or input information, our rod height, in this case because it's a custom prism, the prism constant. If it happens to be back to our MT1000, again, this is where we can get into and change it from passive to active. We can change our rod height, we can change our channel, etc. So again, settings for the prism. Settings for the robot. Okay, so I'll click on the robot, and there's some stuff we can do in here. We can always check to see if our robot is still level. Now keep in mind if it becomes out of level, it's going to give us a warning message that the instrument is no longer level. But we can also get in here and hit the input form button, and depending on what type of robot we have, for example, I'm using a RTS 773. But if I had an 873, I would see the option right here in this blank space to make that green laser high power or low power. If I was using a RTS 655, which doesn't have a built-in camera in the instrument itself, it actually has a track light, I would see an option here to turn the track light on or off. Okay, so it's smart enough to know what robot you're using, and therefore it will make the options available to you based on what the features of that robot are. But at a minimum, you can come in here and you can enter in a reference elevation. That would be something that maybe the surveyor has given to you on the job site. Finished floor is here, and you can punch in the reference elevation here if you want to do that. The temperature, Remember, this is supposed to be within 18 degrees plus or minus of the ambient temperature around the robot. So if it's cold in the morning and hot in the afternoon, you might want to come in here and adjust this as you're taking off your jacket and things are getting warmed up. Again, you need to be within 18 degrees for the system to run in its optimum capabilities. And then pressure, this is a reading that you really can't do a whole lot with. The instrument itself has a built-in barometer, and it basically just keeps track of the pressure. That way, if a pressure system comes in or out, it's keeping track of that. And the main thing you need to remember is just the temperature. Keep it within 18 degrees. Okay, and then measure. All right, so we've got measure and settings here. This is where we can control our horizontal and vertical tolerance. All right, if I'm laying out a trench and it just needs to run in a relatively certain direction, I can set my tolerance to 1 inch. All right, just kind of close, but not very accurate. I shouldn't say accurate, not very tight of a tolerance. Or on the flip side, if I've got a 3-inch sleeve and a 2x4 wall, I might want to adjust my tolerance to 1/16. Essentially what we're doing here is we're adjusting the size of our bullseye. All right, a bigger bullseye is easier to hit. Okay, tighter, smaller bullseye is harder to hit. Okay. And then our vertical tolerance here, again, we can adjust it all the way up from 1 inch down to 1/16 of an inch. Or if we don't care about the vertical whatsoever because we know that there's deflection on the deck, or it's pan deck and it's going up and down, or if it's a sloped surface, we can simply say ignore the vertical tolerance, and it won't give us a red flag when we stake out a point because we're not perfect on our elevation. Okay. Then layout, we can either use next or nearest. The main difference here is nearest is the next closest point to me after I stake a point. Next would be the next numerical point. So it could be that we've got 0.1 on the south of the building, 0.2 on the north of the building, 0.3 on the south of the building, 0.4 on the north of the building. And what happens is we're trekking across the building back and forth because we chose next numerically instead of nearest. But there may be some instances where you want to use one or the other. Most of the time, we're going to run in nearest, probably 99% of the time. As far as DR mode, we've got visual layout and standard. You always want to make sure that this is in visual layout. The reason why is when it points the laser at a point to lay out, it will make some trigonometric corrections to help that point be exactly where it's supposed to be on the XY coordinate, no matter what the vertical is doing. If there is, again, some deflection in the deck, if there's a sloped surface, having it on visual layout will allow the system to adjust and keep you exactly right on the XY coordinate where you need to be. And then as far as measure mode goes, you've got high precision and fast precision. They are both very precise, thus the name. High precision takes about a 3-second minimum long shot. A lot of people like to use this for their control points. Okay. Fast precision takes about a 1-second long shot. Okay, it's faster. Neither one is more precise than the other, although the high precision one, again, people like to use that for the control points because it does take a longer shot and it averages out all those shots in that time frame. So it kind of takes a multiple shot sequence and then averages out for you. Great for control points, not necessary, but some people like it. And then fast precision is something that you're going to use for your layout. It's quicker, it's faster, still very precise. So those are our settings. Okay, again, measure, settings, device, settings, and then jobs, settings.